Welcome back to the Running Explained podcast. Hi, I'm Coach Elisabeth, and I'm here to break down the science of running in a way that actually makes sense. Whether you're training for your very first race, aiming for a new PR, or just trying to be a more balanced runner, this podcast is your go-to spot for all things running. At Running Explained, running is more than just about logging miles. It's about becoming the best version of you. That's why we talk about more than just improving your fitness, but how to support your physical, mental, and emotional health too, so you'll see improvements that go far beyond race times. And if you're looking for more support, I've got you covered. Whether you're interested in one-on-one coaching, following a structured training plan, or joining our supportive group coaching, I've got options to meet you where you are and help you level up. Ready to dive in? Let's go. My guest this week is Kallup McCoy. And this is a very special episode because we recorded this less than 24 hours before he set out to run across America, which he is currently doing as of the publishing of this episode. Kallup is a running coach, a personal trainer, and he is the founder of RezHOPE, a Cherokee-based nonprofit organization that supports people in recovery from substance use disorders. Kallup is himself in recovery, and he has an absolutely incredible story of the before and the now, being in addiction and now being a runner. And part of his 3,000-mile journey across America that he's currently doing is so integral to his entire story. This episode was like having a conversation with a friend I didn't even know I already had. And I cannot wait for you to learn more about Kallup and what he is doing. And right now, I will say at the top of the episode, if you want to support what he is doing, you can follow him on Instagram, on YouTube. You can donate to his project through RezHOPE. All those links are in the bio, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Kallup, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me on, Elisabeth. This is, we finally made it happen.
I know.
It's been a challenge getting here, but I'm super excited to be on.
Isn't that how life goes, though, sometimes? It's a challenge to get here, but I'm super glad that we did.
Yeah, I'm glad I finally made it and arrived here. The ups and downs, and it was challenging to make it all happen with the schedule, but yeah, here we are.
So before we dive into the meaty, big conversation topic, and obviously you're going to learn a ton about you in our conversation today, before we get started with our fun 3 quick questions, just tell us very briefly, very, very briefly,
Okay.
Who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so my name is Kallup McCoy II, and I am an enrolled member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and I'm from Cherokee, North Carolina. And I am a founder of a nonprofit organization called RezHOPE Recovery and Consulting. And I'm a coach, a speaker. I do a lot of speaking in high schools and colleges and things like that. And I'm currently, I'm a runner as well, but I'm currently getting ready to run across America tomorrow morning at 7:30 in San Diego.
And you're speaking to us from San Diego. Like by this time, 24 hours from now, you're going to be on the road.
I'm going to be on the road. Yes, less than 24 hours. The nerves are setting in so bad right now.
I cannot wait to talk more about that. Before we get started into, like I said, the big topic of conversation, I have 3 fun questions that I always like to ask my guests. And you don't have to think about it too hard, but it can be more than one word. And so my first question is, if you could have a guaranteed race entry, all expenses paid trip to any race or event in the entire world, what would you choose?
Okay, I want to choose 2. Okay. Sydney Marathon. I've never been to Australia. That's something I always wanted. That's something I want to do and participate in one day. And then I would do UTMB on the ultra side of things.
Nice. That's a fun, I say that like, oh, that's a fun one. Like I've done it. I have not, but that's a fairly iconic trail race.
Yeah, absolutely. The views, the vibes, the energy over there, that's definitely something on my list.
All right. Second question. What is your favorite fuel for running these days?
Well, it's changed, coming from marathon training to running across America and, ultra running. But I would say I love Morton. I love Precision Fuel on the marathon side of things. And as far as the ultra running goes, Bojangles seasoned fries. bar none, the best fries out there.
Are they best when fresh, or are you, getting a liking for them as they had a while to sit in a bag?
I like them to get a little soggy, sit in the bag for a minute. But I mean, just that sodium and everything and the seasoning, it hits. That's rocket fuel for me.
I love it. That's savory carbs right there. Everybody's looking for a savory carb option. There you go. All right. And last question. What is your absolute favorite pair of running shoes that you have right now or have ever had and wish that they never stopped making?
So I want to clash here with some brands, but nobody sponsored my run right now, so I want to just say it. Um, I love the Brooks Max. Wait, oh my gosh, which one is it? Which Max is it? The newest one.
The Hyperion Max?
Yes, the Hyperion Max. I love the Hyperion Max. Sorry, my dog's barking over here. And then I love the Nike Vomero 18s. I just got those recently.
Nice.
Yes.
All right. Now we got all that fun stuff out of the way. All right. So we are talking, probably people can understand this. The reason we're talking today, one of the reasons that we're talking today, not a different time throughout the year, last year or next year, is that, like I said, you're about to run across America. And that's for a very specific reason. So we're going to bring it all the way back. And I want to learn more about who you are and how you ended up sitting in a hotel room in San Diego, getting ready to run a couple thousand miles. So, go ahead and tell us about your upbringing. What was it like? What was the first part of your life like?
Well, I grew up in Cherokee on the Kallup boundary, which is very similar to reservation. Um, Grew up with my mom and dad and my sister. I've got two older sisters and a brother. And, our family was, we had a good tight knit family, and my mom and dad showed me a lot of love and instilled a lot of good qualities in me and character traits. And they had their own struggles and demons and their own trauma, from their past and their childhood, and doing the best that they could. And, seeing some of the challenges that they had within their marriage and splitting up, and, some alcoholism, just throughout my family. And, that was challenging growing up because it was so normalized. And then, watching my sister kind of struggle with mental health, and watching her struggle with addiction and substance use at a very young age, that kind of, I was started to repeat what I was seeing, and I got mixed up in the drug scene, pretty early on. Actually, my addiction started, Elisabeth, because I was getting migraine headaches at 11 years old, and they prescribed me Stadol, which is a narcotic. And I started taking this Stadol, abusing it within like a month or two. And now looking back, like, now I see that it was, those challenges that I was facing in my home life. It was, just anxiety, general anxiety that I had, just helping me escape, helping me be comfortable in my own skin. Throughout that time period, though, I got involved with sports. I loved playing basketball growing up, community ball. I played baseball for a year. Got into running cross country. My first year of running, 7th grade, I was terrible. I was the second to worst runner on a team, and I struggled through that season, and I kept telling my mom, I was like, I do not want to do this. This is terrible. It sucks. And she was like, no, you're going to finish this out. And I did, got through the season. We won a conference, and which was cool because I got to be part of some success as a team and building that camaraderie and those relationships and discipline and stuff. And so I came back the next year in 8th grade, and I won the conference championship as an 8th grade. Um, and got involved in football in 9th grade. I wanted to be popular and chase the girls, and so I stopped running because running wasn't as popular back then. And I started getting mixed up during that time in high school, getting mixed up in the drug scene, and going to parties, and just exposing myself to different situations, and harder drugs were being exposed to me. And so at 16 years old, I started to, for the first time in my life, I used meth before a football game. And one of my buddies had brought a bag of meth on the bus, and he was like, "Hey, we're going to put this in our water bottles, and it's going to make us play like Superman." And so it wasn't. I didn't use it as a way to cope or to escape in that moment. It was literally like thinking of like a performance enhancer almost, you know. And it didn't help that I went out and actually had some success during that, and I was like, man, this was. I need to keep taking this. And about 5 games into the season, I don't share this a lot of podcasts though, but 5 games into the season, we were doing playing in a big game, and it was during warm-ups, and you could see my shoulder pads like expanding, and because my heart rate, I thought my heart was going to explode, and it scared me to death. And I had to go take the SAT the next day, so I was up all night from this meth, and I crashed in the middle of the SAT, bombed that SAT because I'm falling asleep during it. And so this was around the time that my life really started to spiral out of control, and just continue to party, and I'm drinking, and just binge drinking, and just continuing to go down this path, and it's a slippery slope, and it takes you further than you want to go. And the next thing I know, here I am getting kicked off the basketball team my senior year. I had scholarship offers to go run track at the next level or play football at the next level, and I lost those opportunities because I wasn't showing up for classes and doing what I needed to do within in school. So I barely graduate high school, get into a relationship, and have my oldest son Hayden, and then I have my youngest son Kallup a year later, to almost to the day, with another woman. And because of my addiction, like I don't have the ability to be a father, to show up and be there for them. And this goes on for years. I was never a presence in my oldest son's life, and that's still haunting me today. Like, that's still a broken relationship. We don't even talk, and which is very unfortunate. And my youngest son, like, I was around for him and until he was like 5 years old, and I start, for the first time in my life, like, I'm I'm like snorting pills. I can't hold down a job. I've gained a bunch of weight. I'm just super unhealthy. And my life, Elisabeth, at that point in time, like, it was go work a job for a little while, get a paycheck, and then start trying to sell to support my habit. And so that was just like this cycle that I was in. I had a concrete business shortly before this time, and I lost that because, number one, the recession hit. Number two, I had this crippling addiction. So I lose that around this time. Like, my dad gets diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I don't know how to handle this. I have no coping skills. Only one that I have is to use, to pick up the drug. And around that time, I get the news my dad's going to pass away. They give him 6 months to live, and I did something that I said I was never going to do, which is put a needle in my arm. And so I start shooting up, and it just goes off the deep end really fast. And for the next 3 years, while my dad's fighting for his life, I move into the house with him, and I'm still on his pain medication, and I'm just like writing checks and everything. And he always believed in me so much, though. He always believed in me, and told me that I was going to do great things. And I remember him telling my mom that he was like, when I'm gone, do not give up on him. You keep loving him. You keep telling him what he's capable of, who he is, and one day he's going to come out of this. And he ended up passing away in September of 2014. And at that point in time in my life, I was living in such a place of despair and hopelessness that I did not want to be alive anymore. I had so much shame, and just I from what I was doing to my dad, how I'm disappointing my family, the broken relationships, being an absent father, just all the talent and ability that I had. I felt like I'd squandered it, and this was going to be my life. And I thought that I was just going to die, from overdose. And I tried to commit suicide that way a few times, and God, universe, just continued to step in and keep me here for a much larger purpose. And I didn't understand that at the time.
Before we go into all of it, I'm like, oh, I have so many questions that I want to dive into and all of that. Thank you for sharing that. I think the passage of time, it can be easier to tell our stories to some degree, but going through the process of reliving that can be really challenging, as people who know that I myself, I am almost 8 years sober. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is describing kind of the specific kind of way markers in your life's journey with, narcotics at age 11. Who's prescribing narcotics to an 11-year-old for migraines? Like, what was that? I hope that doctor lost their license. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Well, that was around the time of like all the over prescription, prescribing of narcotic. Yeah. So that's,
Yeah, he was getting a kickback. Seeing your sister, like you said, struggle with her own addiction and mental health issues. But what I think is very interesting is that somebody might be listening to your story or my story and think, wow, like at none of these points did they ever decide this is the red line. Like this is enough. Like the feeling like your heart was going to beat out of your chest before the football game. That was not the red line. That was not the, oh boy, I'd better stop and turn my life around. Crashing out of the SAT, getting kicked off the basketball team. Like, I think for somebody who hasn't experienced addiction firsthand, like personally, it looks crazy from the outside to think, how do you just keep going through all of this? But as you just said, there's that hugely reinforcing cycle of, well, I have no coping skills and now I feel super guilty and a lot of shame about what I'm doing. And really the only thing I know how to do is just to keep going, even if I technically do want to stop. It's a really dark place to be in.
it is. It is. It's very, like I said, it's hopelessness and despair and shame, and that's that becomes your identity, and that's who you think that you are, and it's not. That's a lie, right? And also too, like these addictions, they thrive in silence and darkness, and so whenever we're not talking about it, it's just continuing to eat us alive from the inside out, and so I think that's why, like, when you look at somebody's story and you look at how many times like you would think it would be that rock bottom moment. And change is tough. Change is scary. Good change, bad change, whatever. Like it's just it is what it is, and it's really difficult to change your life and to go a different direction. And so you can't will somebody into willingness, and they have to get to that point to them by themselves. And sometimes it destroys people. And one of the things I heard one time. My wife Caitlin, she works as she worked as a peer support specialist, but her boss was, she went in to talk to her boss one day about one of her peers, and she's like crying, and she's like, I don't know how to help this person, and her boss was like, people have the freedom to destroy themselves, and there's nothing you can do about it, but try to love them through it. And so that's like all these situations for me, that's what I was experiencing, and ego, resentments, trauma, until you face that, until you start really digging into that and leaning into why those things are happening, like nothing really changes.
So, thinking about where you are in your life up until this point in time where we just took a pause, I think it's probably safe to say you weren't necessarily very physically active in a way that I know some people can be in like the depths of a horrible addiction and still hit the gym 5 days a week. That was never me. When I was drinking, I was like a slug. And so were you running exercise of any kind at all on your mind during this time?
So actually, there's a gap there when I talked about like when I first started shooting up, and I was around 25 when that happened. But when I was 19 to like 21, I got into MMA, and I had 3 amateur fights, and I would snort cocaine and then go to the gym and train. And then I'd party at night. Around that time, I was actually in basic law enforcement training, and I was partying and snorting cocaine, and I would go to my classes to become a law enforcement officer. And eventually, I got flunked out. But yeah, I was involved with mixed martial arts, and that was something that I really loved. And crazy enough, Elisabeth, I get my arm broke in my third fight, and I go to block a kick, and the guy kicks me and snaps my arm in half. And so what happens? I go to the hospital. They had me Percocet, and I never went back to the gym after that. Never went back to the gym.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what I did, and
Oh,
then nothing up until I got into recovery.
so talk about this. Bring us back to where we left off. Your father is very ill. You're living with him. Then what happens?
He just continued to fight, and that watching him fight as hard as he did is something that was such a profound thing to see. And I carry that with me today, because I gave him that 6 months and he held on for almost 3 years. And the reason he held on, and the nurse asked him this, was like, why are you fighting so hard? You're a tough man. And he was like, I want to live to see my son become the man that I know he can be. And so seeing him fight because he had this purpose and he wanted to see me become this person that I am today is something that, it's inspiring to me. And I carry that in my heart. Yesterday was his birthday. He'd be 78 yesterday. So this is a very meaningful time for me. But he ended up passing away, and I talk about it in my short documentary. And when I heard my dad's heart rate monitor flatline, I was in the bathroom connected to his hospice room, and I literally had a needle in my arm shooting up when my dad died. And I was so mad at myself. But I didn't know how to do anything else. It's so easy to look at somebody and be like, you just need to do this. Like, looking back, and I see this happening with my dad, and I wish that in that moment that my life changed, but it didn't. And I just went straight back to what I knew, a moth to a flame. So, after he passes away, I go straight back to it. And I struggle with that for the next 3 years. And I try to commit suicide on several different occasions. And for some reason, I was spared, and I'm still here. And so in March of 2017, I finally get arrested, and I've got outstanding warrants, and I was going to be sitting in jail for a while. And I started to dry out, started to get clear headed. And I was, just to a place of brokenness and surrender. And that's a beautiful place to be. It hurts, it sucks, but that's where the change happens. That's where, I heard a quote like, peace starts with suffering and freedom starts with confinement. And that was my story. Like, my freedom started with me being in county jail and me being in a place of complete brokenness and surrender and looking for something different, being open to something different. And I wanted to use that opportunity that I had been given, all the opportunities of the overdoses I overcame and was spared through. Like, there's something greater here. Like, God is calling me to something greater, and I need to do something about that. And I need to lean into that. And I wrote out a simple prayer in jail, and I had this radical encounter with God when I was in there, and it completely changed my perspective. It changed my heart. It changed the things that I wanted to accomplish. And the people, like, you got to change everything in recovery, like people, places, playgrounds. But I had to get to that point of complete surrender for that to happen. And when that happened, and I always describe it as, I had the most exhilarating feeling of freedom I've ever had. And I was in county jail, locked up, wasn't getting out. But I was so excited because I knew things were going to be different. And I knew that I was taking a different path now. And I started to work out when I was in jail. So I go in, I weighed 130 pounds when I went in. I was strung out, staying up weeks at a time, barely eating. And within a few months of my jail stay, I was up to 215. So I put on a lot of weight when I was in jail. And I was like, okay, I want to change some things. I want to try to get in shape, and started to do jailhouse workouts, and started just read a lot of self-help books, reading the Bible, and setting some goals for myself. And eventually I got released after 6 months, and 8 weeks after I was released, I did my first Ironman 70.3 on no training, didn't swim. I was riding a mountain bike. I ran a half a mile before I'd done this, and I showed up at Wilmington for the Beach to Battleship, and I completed that Ironman 70.3. And that was the start of my journey into endurance sports.
First of all, that's an incredible story. I mean, I feel like I have so many follow-up questions. Actually, I want to go back. Have you ever tried to get clean before? Was this the first time that you'd really spent like, hey, I've totally detoxed for the first time in a while, or had you tried to do this before on your own?
No, if I detoxed, it was because I was out of money and I couldn't hit a lick and go out and get my drugs. But I got locked up one time in 2016 and I got released to go to a program. I do one day in that program and I'm super combative, closed off, ego, is at just at a high level and it's in control and I wasn't trying to listen to anybody. And so I basically start an argument with the director of the program and I'll leave after one day and go right back to it. So I'd never tried to get clean before. My mom actually involuntary committed me on like 4 or 5 occasions. And they would either catch me and put me into the hospital and I would escape the hospital or I would run from them when they show up to arrest me and take me in for involuntary. So I was just, yeah, I was wild back then. I was not trying to listen to anything.
I want to ask you about this moment of change, this pivotal point. And I think it's something very similar to myself. Woke up one day and it was like a switch had flipped. I was ready. I was done. It wasn't like, oh, I don't want to drink today. It was like, no, I'm done. And it was that feeling, that exhilarating feeling, aside from feeling just awful, because I felt awful every day. It was this incredible feeling, this incredible rush. And it sounds like you may have experienced something similar. And when I talk to a lot of people who find running as adults, there is some sort of catalyst. There's a reason we start running as adults. But I think it's even more powerful combined with that switch flipping, that moment of change, that, everything is now different moment when we realize, oh, now this is no longer the life I want to live. And it's not that I just want this, it's that without even realizing it, I am already on the path to this different life. Mm-hmm. That's an incredible feeling. I think about that day in my own life a lot. Do you think about that day in yours? I assume quite a bit.
Absolutely. I standing on the Pacific coast a few minutes ago, looking out over, watching the waves roll in and everything. And I was like, man, I cannot believe I'm standing here right now. Like, I remember not that long ago, I was looking out of the Swain County jail window, people watching, just praying and wondering what a different life would look like. And now here I am, and I'm getting to live what I prayed for. And it all started with that suffering and surrender, and just like, oh my God, that switch flipped and everything's different. And I want to go to do a complete 180 and go a totally different direction.
So talk to us about your first Ironman. I think for people who, for me, what you said, doing a half Ironman on no training, on one hand, it's like, that's a little crazy. But on the other hand, being in that place of, early sobriety, early recovery, it's almost like you have nothing to lose. And you're like, why not? Why not do this? Talk to us about how that went. How did your first triathlon go?
So I was showed up in the race and they put me into the water. I was the first wave and there was 1,800 competitors, athletes that day. And I was the last person to get out of the water. So almost 1,800 people passed me, swimming over top of me, kicking me in the head. I'm freaking out. Like I swim with good technique for about the first 400 meters. And then I have to roll on my back and just backstroke the whole thing. So that's how I got through the swim. And then I get on my bike, which I didn't have clip ins. I just had flat pedals and tennis shoes. And so I get through the bike, and which I was most concerned about the swim, and I was concerned about the run because I hadn't done any running. And then I do the run, and I have shin splints so bad. I mean, it was excruciating, and I had to run walk a lot of it. Ultimately, I finished. I can't remember what my time was. It was under 7 hours. I know that, which is not bad for your first one, right? So just being around that community though, and hearing other people who were in recovery that I met before the race, that sense of accomplishment that I had just done something really challenging, and it gave me that community that I'd been searching for, I felt like. And so I told myself then and there that I want to continue to immerse myself in endurance sports and around this community for as long as I possibly can. And so it's just been a steady, gradual progression since then.
So even though you were partially crippled by shin splints from the triathlon, you became a runner. Talk to us. Tell me about that. Where did that come from? Like, why running? Why not biking? Why not triathlon? Why not go back to MMA? Why running?
There's a lot of reasons to that. Running was, so when I was in jail, I read this paper, and I talk about it in the documentary, but I read this newspaper article where my tribe does a bike ride from Cherokee to Oklahoma, retracing the Trail of Tears. And I knew that I wanted to get out and I wanted to do something physically challenging and immerse myself into something like that. So I go to apply for that, find out I can't do it. I've got a felony drug conviction on my record. And I remember going to my tribal leadership, trying to get the rule changed. Ultimately, they tell me they couldn't do it. So I remember speaking to them televised in front of, standing at the podium in front of all my leadership. And I said, well, if you guys aren't going to let me ride the bike, I'll run it. I was a little pissed off, if I'm being completely honest, because they wouldn't let me participate. And I had no intention of saying that. And so I kind of just fell into running, like by chance, by happenstance there. And after I said that, that was November of 2017. And I was like, holy crap, I can't believe I just said this and I put it out there. Now I've got to do it. And so, kind of had my back against the wall, and I wanted to just be true to my word. And I knew that I had a lot of people like me struggle with addiction. My community has been impacted by that so badly. Lost so many people close to me. And I was like, I want to inspire people like me. And I want to just go out here and see what I can do and try to attach this to a bigger purpose. And that was around the time that we started the nonprofit RezHOPE. And so that's how I kind of fell into running. And through that journey, though, of running the Trail of Tears, I connected with who I am as an Indigenous man, right? I connected with my ancestors, what they went through, the ones that resisted, because Eastern Band, there's 3 bands of Cherokee. There's Cherokee Nation, UKB, which is in Oklahoma, and then there's Eastern Band, that's where I'm from, in Cherokee, North Carolina. Our band, they resisted and hid in the mountains, and then the rest were shipped west, right?
Can you talk to us about what the Trail of Tears is? I don't know that a lot of people really understand this part of American history.
They do. I don't know, a lot of people, it's not taught anymore, really. So in 1800s, 1830s, the government took indigenous lands from the civilized tribes, Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, Seminole, and I can't remember the 5th one. Oh my gosh, I should know this. So anyways, take our land and they ship us west to Oklahoma, to Indian Territory. And so that's why there's 5 different major routes that they used. And this particular route is the northern route. So that's the bike route that they typically do. So anyways, it was a way for me to reconnect through my ancestors' struggle. It was a way for me to reconnect to who I am as a Cherokee person. Like, loss of identity and culture is another reason that people turn to drugs and alcohol. If you strip somebody's identity as an Indigenous person, their language, their songs, their ceremonies, like, they're going to find other ways to cope with that. And so, like, learning about that history and learning about that generational trauma through this event and through running the Trail of Tears was something that completely changed my life. And it helped me to connect with so many people, throughout that journey, and ultimately finishing in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is, we're getting ready to start this run across America. And that's going to be one of our major stops. Like, the people that I've met through running, through that journey, are people that still support us, still welcome us like family. And so, like, that just opened up so many doors for us. And that was like our first fundraising event for RezHOPE too, and kind of kicked off the organization. So there was just a lot going on within that journey.
How many days did it take you?
40 days. 40 days I was averaging
40 days and 40 nights.
40 days and 40 nights. I rested a lot. So the total, that was the total amount of days running. The total amount of days that it took, including rest days, was 47. But yeah, so I averaged 20 miles a day, and which is baffling to me now because of what I'm fixing to do here soon.
So clearly you weren't turned off after finishing this. You didn't think, wow, that was really incredible. I never want to do that again. Let's find another way to support what I want to, make the change I want to make in the world. One of the things you talked about in your documentary was you were, I think, surprised that people, total strangers, were reaching out to you during this and asking if they could come run with you.
Uh-huh.
Was that did that ever cross your mind that people would want to do that?
Absolutely not. I mean, just coming from the experiences that I came from and, just living in a place of shame for so long and just feeling unworthy, like I'm super humble and grateful anytime like I get support. Even today, like just opportunities like podcasts and running into people and people saying, "Oh my God, what you're doing is inspiring." Like I'm so humbled by that because I just lived in a place of such shame and guilt and not wanting to live. And so having that support is always so surprising still today, honestly.
So going from that day, and take us a brief summary of that, the end of that first big event that you did, and briefly tell us what the past couple of years have been like and why you decided to run across America.
I finished that day. I get into Tahlequah. We have a ceremony there, celebration. A lot of the same people that really scoffed at me and doubted me, even my own leadership, they actually flew to Oklahoma to watch me finish. And so I made believers out of them, and I still have some support from a lot of those people. But I remember getting those flags handed off to me, my mom watching, Caitlin being there, me making all these new friends. And I finished on my birthday on June 28th. It's me and my mom's birthday. And my grandma. We have 3 generations on one birthday.
Wow.
So like being able to see my mom like beaming with such pride because she finally got to see, she'd been seeing it, but like this kind of crescendo and culmination of like what my dad always said I would be. And she always tells me like, I'm glad I didn't give up on you, and I always stayed on you. And I tried to do the best that I could, to try to let you know that you're loved. And to see like me complete that journey and her standing there was just incredible. And I remember walking off and I got approached by the local paper out there and they're like, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? And I got to go pull this video. And I'm like, I'm super proud. I'm tired, but I'm looking for the next thing. Like I'm already like, what's on the horizon? What's on the horizon? And for better or worse, like be in the moment, celebrate it. And I felt like I was, but also too, it's like, we got to get back to the drawing board, and get back on the grind again. And like from that, after that event, I got into ultra running. I started trying to do 100-mile races. I did, my journey's not been where I am today, being a 2:36 marathoner, getting ready to run across America. Like I had a really rough road to get here. I didn't have a ton of talent, just a lot of grit, determination, and being stubborn. But, I tried to sign up for these 100-mile races. I DNF first 2 before I finally complete the 100-miler. My first ever races leading up to the Trail of Tears. I did a marathon. I finished in 5:25. I was one of the last men on the course. I did a 50K the next month. I was second. I was the last person on the course. Had to walk the last 10K or 20K. My first 50-miler, I was second to last in that race. I finished 10 minutes under the cutoff. And I was just like, am I ever going to get better? Like, what is going on here? But then I ran the Trail of Tears, completed that, and then I transitioned over, got into running hundreds. And ultimately, that lasted for a couple of years. And then I started doing half marathons. And I was like, man, this going fast is fun. I want to do more of this. And so I started really focusing on the half marathon distance. And ultimately, I wanted to do another marathon prep. And I did, I ran 2:49 at Missoula in 2022. Yeah, 2022, qualified for Boston. And I had a coach, Jeff Cunningham. He's out in Austin, Texas. And worked with Jeff for 2 years. And Jeff got me down to 240. I ran 240 twice and 241 at Asheville last year. And I just fell in love with the marathon. I absolutely love racing the marathon. And, I recently just ran 236 at Indy. And when I announced, or when I was doing my Asheville marathon last year, at the very end of the video, I told my videographer, he's like, "Where's your mind at? What are you thinking?" And I was like, "We're going to go out here. We're going to rip. We're going to run a sub 240 marathon first. Once we complete that, we're going to run across America." And I announced that last year in that video. And then after I finally got my marathon personal best, I was like, "All right, it's time to switch. Let's focus on this run across America and trying to raise money for the nonprofit again." So that's kind of been my progression over the years.
I love it. You started with a 600-mile ultra race over multiple days, and then you worked your way down to the half marathon.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah.
But I want to ask you something. I'm just curious, this idea of being in a place of suffering, like a rough patch in a race, even workout, mostly in races. And I've heard people say, so I just remember that what I'm experiencing right now is nothing compared to the suffering that I experienced when I was actively in addiction. And I was like, I can personally understand that. But at the same time, I have also a very low tolerance for discomfort, as well as a very high tolerance for discomfort in some things. And I'm just curious what your perspective on this is, because there's no doubt that people who have gone through addiction, like, we can suffer like nobody's business, but at the same time, we don't like to be uncomfortable. How do you deal with that when you're out there and things get hard?
How did I deal with the suffering? I really, it's a spiritual experience for me. And I think that's why I love it so much. Yeah, the suffering, it's fun. Like Courtney Dauwalters talks about, like going into the pain cave and being okay there and just trying to relax in the pain cave. Like, that's very appealing to me. I love that. I love just problem solving, riding the waves, just suffering well, being comfortable in that. One of the things that we have to practice in recovery is radical acceptance. The serenity prayer. I mean, living that out. And I think there's no better way to learn and get good at that radical acceptance, than to put yourself in those difficult circumstances where you can't change it. You can't change the circumstance. You can't change how you're feeling in the moment. You just got to be okay with it. And so for me, it's like, it helps me to know and to know that I can deal with those hard times and that adversity when situations are out of my control in life. This is an adversity and a challenge that I get to choose. And I get good at that. I get efficient in that. And so I feel like I just handle certain situations better outside of running because of running. And, it's all learning experience. And I know that at the end of the day, it's going to make me a better person. It makes me a more disciplined, more like being out here on the road with my team and everything. One of the things that I was thinking about, like, in the midst of suffering, I want to show so much kindness to my team, so much kindness and compassion. Like, even though I'm going through the hard, I want to check in on them. Like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I think, like, that's something that I just love about what I'm fixing to embark on, is how well can I suffer, but also how well I can show up for other people and be kind.
That's something that I'm going to digress a little bit. I know a lot of runners struggle with the suffering that what we try to do sometimes requires of us. And, nobody wants to do that. Some people just want to run and have it be fun from start to finish. Like, it's relatively comfortable. We're not trying to push the limits. That's great. But for some people, the suffering is the point. But I think it's when we when it is most challenging is when we aren't expecting it to be hard and it gets hard. That really can throw people off.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I didn't think it was going to be that hard. I didn't think it was going to be that challenging. Are you, not to be a fatalist, but like, are you kind of always expecting that it's just going to be hard and it's going to be what it is? Or are you just not even thinking about that and you're truly just in the moment to moment?
I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be
Yeah.
challenging. I just have that mindset and that expectation. There's a proverb that says, "Beyond mountains are more mountains," and that's life. The only thing that we get for overcoming our this challenge is our next challenge, and so that's why I think I love running and ultra running and these types of events so much, because it is a metaphor for life. I think so.
I really think it is. I mean, I've experienced the entire depth and breadth of the human experience in a single race. It's incredible what running can do and what it can be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, let's talk logistics. So you're about to run. How many miles? What's the route?
3,000 miles from San Diego
3,000
to Wilmington, North Carolina.
All right. And how many days roughly have you allocated for this?
So I've allocated 56 days. I'm trying to do it in 50 or under.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal.
How do you train for something like this? Does your training appreciably change, or are you just, doing the same thing and just a little bit more?
Yes, both ends. It changed a bit. I took a down week after Indianapolis, and then I hopped right into transcon training. And I hired a coach. She is kind of specializes in multi-day events and ultra running. And she knows how to suffer. She's a 2-time cancer survivor. She's a fighter. She's in the arena herself. She's still competing and running. Shout out Coach Mary Cates. So I hired her, and we had a very collaborative relationship and build to this event. And we just bounce ideas off one another. She say, "Hey, I think your mileage should be this. I think we should increase." We kind of took the 10% approach, to volume. I didn't want to have any kind of, super high increases in jumps and volume and everything, just coming off marathon training. But I knew pulling back the intensity, I could raise the volume a little bit more. So we hopped right into it, and we built up to 100 miles, 100 plus mile weeks within 3 weeks after I came back when I started the build. It's like 60, 75, 90, and my 4 weeks, like 105. I think that's how it kind of went. That progression went. So it's a little bit more than 10%. She was trying to have me go a little bit more conservative, and I'd be like, I feel really good. Like, energy's good. There's no, I feel like my body's not sending me any kind of whispers. Like, sleep's good. My fueling was so important throughout this. Like, could not be in a calorie deficit. And one of the goals that we had was like, let's try to put on a little bit of weight. Let's try to put on 5 to 10 pounds, because it's probably
That's hard when you're running 100 miles a week and trying to gain weight. Oh my gosh.
We actually accomplished it though, Elisabeth. So I'm really, yeah, I was telling the team this morning, I was taking some pictures down on the beach, and I was like, got a little extra weight on me here in the pictures, but that was the plan. And it is, well, we got to train like we're going to compete, and we got to make sure our body's prepped for what we're about to embark on. And so, it was a slow progress. It was a progression up to 100 miles. I had a lot of travel throughout this training block, like navigating my travel. I had a couple of speaking gigs, coaching full time still. So I had 20 or 30 athletes that, I'm checking in with, building plans, training, all the things. I got sick twice during this build, just being, fatigue, carried a bunch of fatigue and stress and traveling and all the things. But, what we one of the things that I love to do throughout this training was continuing to keep in some hill strides and fartlek work. Just getting in some cadence work. We want to try to maintain some power so we're not, using a bunch of energy at these slower paces, and just stay really efficient,
Mhm.
And so I would do 1 day of strides or heel strides, and then I'd do a fartlek, maybe 10 by 1 minute or 10 by 2 minutes. I got a little crazy one time. She prescribed me like 10 by 1 minute, and I went and did 8 by 800 at like LT pace. It's like, we don't need to do that, Caleb. Like, we don't need to be running that much that fast. So I backed off, and I mean, things worked out really well though. I had 100. I hit 140 plus on 4 different weeks. My
Wow.
peak week was 175 and 10,000 feet of gain, and that was
Ooh.
almost 3 weeks ago. Felt great. I get into the gym midweek in the middle of peak week, and I'm training with some friends, and I'm super competitive, and I love to get after it in the gym. And so we get in there, and we're doing some goblet squats, and I grab 60 pound, and I hadn't warmed up or anything, and I go down into my squat, and I feel something pulling my back, and I was like, oh, Elizabeth, I had to lay down in the floor. I couldn't do any of the workout. I was just laid back, and I was like, oh my God, this is not good. So I get through peak week. It was fine. Back was a little angry, It was like bothered me a little bit. Go in, see my PT. It's on Sunday after I finished, or Monday after I finished peak week. And I was like, she's like, don't do anything. I don't want you doing any kind of plyometrics or anything with any intensity or heavy. So I was like, okay, go straight to the gym and go through a little full body session. And then I grab some dumbbells and I do dumbbell box jumps with dumbbells. And I feel my back pull again. And had to go get an X-ray on the back and the hip. It came back negative, and then I had to get an MRI last week before I came out here, and it came back. I have a bulging disc in my L4, L5, and it's causing some nerve, pressing on a nerve, and I've also got some stuff going on with my psoas. So in the mornings right now, your boy is stiff getting up. Like, I'm just, left side, I'm favoring the left side a little bit, which we kind of expected that something was going to be bothering us, but it's not ideal. But as long as I can make forward progress, that's the main thing. And that's the build in a nutshell right there.
Gee, was your PT just kind of like shaking your head going, oh, my man, I told you.
She's like,
But...
she's like, I don't even know why you come see me half the time, because you don't listen to me. But you know how we are as runners sometimes. It's like,
yeah,
the last thing you want to do is, that mobility work or the strength training or, yeah.
So considering especially where you are feeling physically these days, what's that warm up look like when you're going to start each day?
Oh, that's great. Great question. I love that. I'll be doing some thoracic mobility. I'll be doing some psoas release with a spiky ball. I'll probably be doing just some pogo hops, leg swings, just going through some drill work. And when I tell people this that have done similar things, they're like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not going to do this. You'll just get up in the morning, you'll run. You will not want to do any of the other stuff. But for me, like, that's something that kept me healthy throughout this whole training block was, pretty much every night I do a 5 to 10 minute mobility routine right before I hopped into bed. I mean, my body held up so well, and I know that's what was working for me. I need to get back to that. And so that's probably what I'll do. I was just telling the team this morning, I was like, I think I want to add another layer of challenge to this Transcon. I want to do 100 push-ups a day. We got a pull-up bar for the RV, and I want to do 25 pull-ups a day on top of my miles. And they're like, they told me, no, you're not. You're not going to want to do that once you get out there. But I'm determined to try to, do some push-ups and pull-ups and keep a little bit of upper body muscle here, because I know that I'm going to either lose weight or I'm going to get, kind of skinny fat, for lack of a better term.
I mean, I don't know if you've read Scott Jurek's book North, when he talks about, running the Appalachian Trail south to north, but this picture, he talks about, getting to the end of it, and you see this picture of him, and he's just like, He's like, and he's eating as much as he can, but he's just kind of like emaciated just because it's
Really?
so demanding for
Yeah.
so long. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, funny story. I met Scott out on the trails randomly out in Boulder. Me, Kara, and I
So
were
probably
riding.
where you usually find him.
Yeah, exactly. We ran by him, and is it Jenny? Is that his wife's name?
His wife. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kara and I were running, and they passed us, and she was like, "Do you know who that was?" I was like, "No." She's like, "That's Scott Jurek," and I was like, "No way, we got to stop him." So I was like, "Can you holler at him?" And Kara hollers at him. Anyways, it was a cool experience. Got to meet him and take a picture with him.
Is there any section of this route that you are thinking will be more challenging? Obviously, it's not flat. There's some hills and slash
132.
mountains.
Yeah, a lot. We're going to have a lot of climbing. 132. We're expecting at least 132,000 feet of gain for these 3,000 miles. The most demanding segment what I think, obviously I'll probably learn differently once I get out there, but I think just coming through the desert and being out there, like there's no towns, no cities for, basically weeks at a time, sometimes a week or two at a time. So just being around just barren land and there's nothing out there, like that's going to be difficult, and it's going to be hot. I probably should have done some sauna training, getting heat adapted, but we're in it now, so there's nothing we can do about it. Radical acceptance.
And aside from fries and Martin gels and precision nutrition, what else is on your nutritional short list for keeping the calories going in and making you happy?
Donuts. Be eating a lot of donuts. Be doing a lot of sweet potatoes and 80-20 ground beef. So a lot of sweet potato and ground beef bowls, rice. I'll be probably doing that breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then just trying to get calories in, however I can throughout the day. So, but lots of donuts, ice cream, milkshakes, my bowls, lots of butter, bacon, just high fat, calorie dense foods. Got to be eating, try to be eating about 10,000 calories a day. I think that's what it's going to take. Maybe a little bit more. Anywhere from 9 to 11,000 calories a day is what I'll be consuming most days.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, that in and of itself requires training to do.
It does. It does.
No, I'm not being facetious. It literally does.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing I did a good job of during training was I would go into Bojangles. I'd order, a chicken supreme meal with seasoned fries. I would hammer that and literally like get right back up and run back out the door. And my stomach was doing really well with that type of stuff. So I think that obviously fatigue and heat and all those things, all those different variables are going to affect my ability to eat. But as far as like gut training goes, I was doing a really good job at that.
As we're starting to wrap up here, I would love to, first of all, have you back on the podcast after you complete this and we can see how it went. But thinking ahead in this undertaking, and I know it's very meaningful for you, talk to me about what you hope to accomplish, not just literally running across the country. Talk to me about the other stuff. What do you hope to accomplish by doing this?
Well, obviously raising money for my nonprofit, RezHOPE Recovery and Consulting, and we have the vision. We've got a home, the Gadoogie House, that we serve 8 men coming out of incarceration, detox, treatment, and we get them hooked up with employment, recovery support. We do a support group called Addict to Athlete 3 times a week where we work out together, and then we have a support group topic we all discuss, sweat together, get after it, and then just that shared adversity. And so we want to expand our program. We want to open up a women's home eventually, and I want this run to be financially successful. I want to be a success on the charity side of things, but also too a lot of people in my community, I think, will put themselves in a box. And a lot of people in my community that come from the same background that I come from and Caitlin comes from, like they just don't go out and they don't get to see the world. And the younger generation, the kids, I want them to be inspired by what I'm doing. I want my family to be inspired. I want my sons to be inspired, you know, and also too just honoring my ancestors, my culture, and really amplifying indigenous voices and seeing other indigenous runners start to share their stories and be vocal and talk about like who they are and their culture. And I feel like we're a very underrepresented demographic of people in the running space. And I hope that this might spark a change, that this makes a ripple effect. And that's something that I tried to pitch to brands leading up to this journey. I'm like, you know, why not get behind an indigenous athlete like they do in other, for other athletes and other demographics. And so, you know, that's a few things that I want to accomplish.
Kallup, I can't thank you enough for being here today and for sharing your story. And I cannot wait to follow you along your journey. And if people want to also do that, and maybe they want to also help you financially in this, where can they do that?
So you can go to our website, RezHOPErecovery.com, which I'm sure you'll probably link in the show notes. You can follow my journey. I'll be posting our Zephy link that you can go and donate to. And just follow me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we'll be posting links there. And we have a link on our website as well. And share content. Like if you can't donate, at least a share goes a long ways. You know, it puts it out in front of a much wider audience, and you know, just getting the mission out there and raising as much awareness as I possibly can on what I'm fixing to do.
I think what you're doing is incredible, and I cannot wait to follow along. And again, I really, really thank you for being here today. And I am so excited for you to go get after it tomorrow.
I'm excited too. The waiting's over. Now it's time to do this thing.
Do the thing that you said you were going to do. That's always the worst part. We were like, oh yeah, I did say I was going to do this, didn't I?
I know. I was talking to the team this morning about my leg and my back and everything, and they're like, dude, you're going to have to figure it out. We're in this. We are deep into this. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. I cannot wait for not only people to watch this journey, but I want people to get invested in the characters and who's going to be supporting and who's coming out. Like we want to really do a really good job at storytelling and creating some excitement around this. So can't wait to have everybody follow.